Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome once again to TPL Thursdays, our weekly webinar series devoted to teacher professional learning and brought to you from EA. This is the penultimate session of the 2021-2022 school year, which I'm sure you'll be glad to see the back of. We have sessions already booked in for next year, but if there's anything that you would like to see addressed, please feel free to put your suggestions in the chat, or there's a little place in the evaluation form that I will send you out after this. We are on Microsoft Teams, and as usual, everyone's camera and microphone is muted simply for a matter of housekeeping and keeping things tidy for the presenter. Feel free to put all your questions and queries in chat, and Victoria, I'm sure, will be only too glad to address them at the end. It's just that if questions are coming through during the presentation, it can be quite off-putting. We also use the hashtag TPL Thursdays on Twitter, which I will also put in the chat, and continue the conversations on Twitter. It really is a useful tool for making connections in the Northern Ireland educational community. And once you're on there, you realise that there aren't probably that many of us. Just a little bit of sort of to address the frequently asked questions. First of all, there will be a recording of this session available for anyone who missed it or signed up, or if you have any tech issues. The PowerPoint slides will also be available, and we will send them out either tomorrow or Monday. The evaluation will also be included in that. And just if anyone has any difficulties with any sound or slide issues during this, the problem is usually resolved by signing out and signing back in again. So if you have a problem, try that, but feeling that you will get a recording and you will get a rundown of the slides. Today's session, as I said, is the penultimate session of the year, and it is on using parental feedback and pupil voice to improve outcomes. And it will be delivered by Victoria Hutchinson, the principal of Strandtown Primary School in the heart of East Belfast. Victoria has done a few sessions for our early career teacher team, and that was what precipitated my interest in getting Victoria to do a session for us. The school itself is a school for year 4 to 7 that places pupils at the heart of the school community, and you will hear from Victoria's presentation that that's not just lip service, that is absolutely at the heart of everything they do. Victoria, I won't steal your thunder and go on any further. I'll let you present yourself, but I'll mute my camera and microphone. But any problems, Victoria, I'll be here, and anybody attending has problems, please address them in the chat. I will help you in there.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jarlath. Good afternoon, folks out there. I hope you're sitting comfortable with a nice coffee in your hand. As Jarlath said, I'm coming from Strandtown Primary School. We are the only junior school in Northern Ireland in that we are only serving P4 to P7 pupils, and I have approaching 1,000 pupils in the school. So really, as a large school, and like any size of school, getting those connections are really, really important. And we came on this journey in just thinking about how can we get greater collaboration and collegiality amongst our school community? Are we a school that really recognises and owns the experience for all our pupils, connects with all pockets of the pupil, parent body and all our stakeholders, and can use those connections and that understanding to bring about real transformative and positive change in our school building? So that was the challenge. So to start that, we needed to think then, okay, where are we? What are we doing at the moment? So like many schools, we had our parent surveys, we had our pupil surveys, we had an active PTA who were busy fundraising and organising great events within the school. We had been running parent workshops to help with literacy and maths. We had set up different policy working groups. So when we had our safeguarding policies that needed consultation, we had little groups of people look at those for us. We had our pupil council, our eco council, and then we always invited feedback from parents following the annual report that went out every year. But in amongst that, and particularly the surveys, which is a big thing that through any process in school, we try to harness our voice of our parents and our pupils. We were really in a place where it was raising more questions than it was answering. And in asking surveys, there was a slight passivity in how both pupils and parents were responding to that. Our problem as well is the survey items, we didn't really know at times what they were telling us. And an example of that would have been, in our parent surveys, we were getting information that communication perhaps needed to improve in the school. And for a school that had really tried hard to communicate all the information, calendar dates, changes, events, what was happening, it was totally a wee bit left field, and we struggled to understand that. And then after one of the focus groups, which is where we were going here, the parents were able to explain it's communication about our children's progress. So it was a very, very specific element that the questionnaire asked about communication, and actually we were reading that wrongly, and what the parents were reading in that item was not what we were thinking it was measuring. So again, surveys can take you in that journey of slight ambiguity. And also you have the dreadful tendency that when you have lots and lots of responses, despite the fact that you may have 25 fantastic glowing responses, that little one that is maybe more of critically constructive in how, that's a polite way to put it, that's the where we tend to put our emphasis and our concentration and our attention. And with all of those elements, we felt we had a school that was active, that had a great school community. But the challenge was, are they active in driving and managing change and in helping us make the decisions within school about the direction that we want to go on? And we've said about this webinar as improving outcomes. And that was really the thing. How influential are our children and our parents in driving our school improvement journey to lead to better experiences and outcomes for our children? So that is where we need to think, right, we need to harness better our pupil and parent voice to bring a better understanding to the school experience and the agreed directions of travel. What would that look like in our school? What journey, what is the path that we need to go on, and what does that look like? So the first step then was in recognizing that need for our pupil focus groups. With that question, do we fully understand our pupil experience, and is there a broad and varied contribution to school decision making? So we had our school council and our eco warriors, but really they were older children within the school. They had a defined remit, and we needed to capture that wider representation and tap into pupil experiences from a pupil-led agenda as well. What matters to them? In school, our ethos was that we would have equality of experience for all our children. But really, was that happening, and how did we know that was happening? So that led us to consider the construction of focus groups on 3 different levels. The first was areas of learning leaders. So that's our subject coordinators. Every area of learning leader twice a year would host pupil focus groups with children from every year group. And that gave a vertical understanding within the school of the experience and how that related to our curriculum intent, purpose and delivery. Then our heads of year. Bearing in mind, just within the size of our school, I have 9 year 4s, 9 year 5s, 6s and 7s. So the head of year would connect across those 9 classes with representatives from each class in seeing about that experience within the year group, that horizontal experience for the children. And then the third element is that we would construct focus groups that would specifically look into our school development priorities and different lines of inquiries that we would have. So we had priorities within our school development plan for the engagement of boys in reading. So we constructed focus groups with boys specifically looking at that. We had priorities within our school development plan that we wanted extension in maths. So we constructed strategically groups of pupils who would belong to that cohort and could relate their experience, their outcomes and their journey from that focal point. What we were really trying to get was a very wide representation. At primary level, particularly, there is the risk that the children that are nominated or selected or self-nominated to join the focus groups are those who are highly verbal, have a high level of verbal skills, and perhaps would be considered capable and mature within their year group. We wanted to ensure that we got a sampling of every learner's experience, irrespective of their profile, their understanding, or their approach. So I have heard that schools may arrange focus groups by taking children who are subject champions out, who would nominate as this is a subject of interest to me and would come forth and talk about it. And that is certainly a very good vehicle too. But for us, we were wanting to ensure that we had every pupil's voice, that there would be no bias in those children who would have, as I said, that prerequisite maturity, sensibility, capability, or ability. So we got those defined levels for the focus groups to operate, and then there's a sense of how did it work. We had to build this from the classroom, getting the children together in groups with an area of learning leader, a head of year, or even anybody to discuss different lines of inquiry within the school. We wanted to get the children to a place where they were happy to have a constructive conversation where they recognized that they didn't just need to tell the adult what they thought they wanted to hear. So it was about building the learner as a reflective learner, being able to critique what is working well and what would be even better. And that was a format that we used, but we built that from the classroom. So before we could get focus groups that were particularly effective within the school, we needed to equip the children from the classroom level with the skills to be reflective and be able to deconstruct aspects of their school day in a way that would give constructive feedback to us. So many of our classes built into their peer, their self-assessment, that model of what went well, even better if. And those discussions then would have been able to be used as building the blocks for the children thinking in that way, thinking about their experience and thinking about their learning. And that's what I say would be the really fundamental start point, is to make sure you're building those discussion abilities and that rhetoric with the children from the classroom in their day-to-day experiences before you ask them to sit and consider larger holistic aspects of the school environment. We've mentioned the broad participation across the school. So our aim then is every year, as the areas of learning leaders and the heads of year connect with the children, that most children in the classes would get the opportunity to participate within a focus group in that year, if not all. So some children would come out to the PE coordinator, some would come out to the literacy. It wouldn't be the same children attending the same groups, that there would be a wide, broad representation. Strategic sampling, as I said, in that wide breadth, you would be taking the learners to ensure everyone had voice and input, but also then using some children on occasion who would help you with a line of inquiry within your school development. As I mentioned, boys reading extension within maths. And that it would be a connected process. So we wanted to get to the point where our focus groups would be a process, not an event. It's not something that just happened, but it fed into a process. And that is where the final point, it has to have follow-up and it had to have action and impact. So if we were harnessing this pupil voice and bringing these groups together, what was going to be the result of that? What was going to be the impact? And how would we carry that forward? So what this these pages are just samples of our pupil focus group action plans. Now, the aim isn't to reduce everything down to a place where we put it into paper format, and it's not to be bureaucratic in any way. But at times, this method of recording gives us a vehicle to think through what we are doing, and gives us a way to capture all those different threads that are happening within the school. Because as I said, there was those 3 levels of focus groups across multiple areas. And how do we bring synthesis to that? How do we distill that all down? And how do we use that? So we constructed these pupil focus group action planning documents. So these relate specifically to our subject coordinators in school. So the subject coordinators have their action planning process in school, which involves a midterm review in the middle of the year, December, January time, and they write a midterm report at that point, and then their action plans that they will construct at the end of the year, which pulls together all the monitoring and evaluating activities that they have engaged in across the year. So in front of that is our pupil focus groups. So before the area of learning leader or the subject leader progresses into their midterm report or their action plan for the year, they host their pupil focus groups, which is in around December, January, and then May and June. And those pupil focus group discussions then relate to targets that have been in the area of Learning Leaders Action Plan, but also in the boxes here, they describe a cyclical process. And that's what I'll just emphasize here now. So you can see the first, I've given two elements here. One is a numeracy, taken from a numeracy, and it's maybe hard to make out in the screen, but I'll just highlight the main points from it. And the other is a PDMU. So the first page for numeracy just mentions notable responses from the focus group. And you can see it's constructed as the WWW-EBI. So that's quite open-ended. And the coordinator was asking the children in the different rooms that are all listed at the top there, what's going well, what's even better if. The next box below then says points arising from the focus group session. So that is where the subject leader listens to what's being said and considers anything that is arising that maybe needs consideration. Things that are arising that relate to the priorities that we have for MAS, or things that are new or different. And then the final box on that first page says planned actions to address noted points. Now, I'm not advocating that everything a child says we have to immediately respond to, but it opens lines of inquiries for us. And that is what this is being used for. Does the subject coordinator understand where we are in MAS better from what the pupil is saying? Is the journey that the coordinator is on within MAS the right one based on what the pupils are saying? Or is there other things that they are tabling with us that need considered? So those actions as well, it doesn't have to be everything now. So some of those actions may be things that are already underway within the action plan, which can be noted. The children said this, that's already a matter for consideration. Or it can also be things that we're just tabling for future consideration. So this has been raised and I'll maybe return to it at a later point. It is maybe something that needs considered in the future. So it's not that everything needs an immediate response, but we're just keeping the voice of the child in the pool when we're considering the directionality of what is happening within this curricular area. And that then first page happens at the mid-year review. And the teacher uses all the information, the coordinator uses all the information that has been synthesized there to construct their action plan. The second bit there that relates to the PDMU is the second part, and this is the second part to this process. So at the end of the year, at May, June time, the coordinator returns to a focus group of children and based on what they're saying, has that review of the actions taken and discusses then things relating to the targets at the close of the year. And the final box at the bottom says follow-up questions shaped for the focus group sessions in the following academic year. So if I'm a subject coordinator and I've really focused on mental MAS and the children are telling me that's working, I may bank with myself that next year I want to ask how that has improved, has that continued, or what those experiences look like. Or now that we're moving on to mental MAS, I maybe would like to consider with children problem solving and move off in that branch. But it gives us a point at which the subject coordinator thinks, where do I go to next? And what will I be hoping to open as a line of inquiry with these children in the next cycle year? So you can see at each stage, we're trying to use through this format pupil focus groups in a cyclical way that we keep them going in what they're contributing to in the subject areas. The next example of that is for wellbeing. We have a wellbeing coordinator in school and she recently has done different focus groups relating to that. And what struck me for the focus groups that the wellbeing coordinator was doing, and this is obviously something that is hugely prominent within our schools at present, and we are thinking about that physical and emotional and social wellbeing journey and our provision for that and what that is looking like within our schools. And from the points that the children were arising, when I read them all, the children were basically saying, it's nothing new you need to do. What we need is more often and more consistently. So there were things that were happening in the school, and I'll be honest, I was thinking, what branch, what direction do we take wellbeing? What should we be introducing now? And what our pupil focus group was basically saying to us was, we like what we're doing, but just do it more consistently and more frequently. You'll note one group commented that the busy nature of the day may impact the frequency of the daily mile. How very insightful of our children. And our planned actions in response to that, those feedback came to the SLT, and then we were giving messages out to our staff saying, look, day is busy, the children recognise this, but this is an important element to them, and then we need to make sure that it is delivered consistently for them at all stages. So again, I use this example just to show you it may not be anything new. It's not that these focus groups table the wild, the aspirational, or the wacky for us. Sometimes it's just the children giving us really affirmative messages of just what we're doing, but do it more consistently and more often. And that is really important for us as a school and as staff to hear. So what has been the impact of our pupil focus groups then? Some of these survey responses then, encouraging and listening to pupil views, that went up by our parents' perception, 4.3% in 1 year. The other percentages I put there came from a survey we did at the end of just last year. So the percentages there are for all or most of the time. So physical and emotional well-being valued, 95%, 5.4% said all or most of the time. Children's attitudes to school, and the really good one there was the pupil perception. 95.7% of children, all or most of the time, felt that their talents were used and they were able to contribute to the school. So it's certainly coming through that voice is active. Changes in the curriculum. There's going to be a video, and in a few wee moments I'll just ask Jarlath to play that. Our pupil focus groups took us in a journey with writing in the school, which was basically allow us freedom with our writing. And that helped us to construct what we understood as the free writes. So it brought about a change in our curriculum. It helped us move forward the school organisation, and a big way of that is when we are presenting anything to our teachers, being able to say, this is what the children are advocating for, has an immediate buy-in and an uptake that we wouldn't otherwise have had the same receptivity to. We understand the impact of what we're doing so much better. It is a huge clarity of our purpose and our intent in what the children are saying to us. And we are building reflective learners with pupils highly active in the school. So the impact on many layers has been a hugely positive one. And the video then, Jarlath, I'll ask you to play this. And what this is was ETI came in following in an inspection in the school, recognised we'd taken a journey with writing that was entirely pupil generated and pupil led, and this is just capturing some of the discussion around that.
Can you see that now, Victoria?
I can indeed. It hasn't played yet, just Jarlath. Yeah.
I know what I've done, Victoria, and it's what I told you not to do.
Mike?
I forgot to put, oh, I'll have to switch my headphones off to share the sound.
Okay.
Typical of these things. Oh. I put the video in for everyone. It's not going to let me share the sound because of the EA settings on here, Victoria.
Okay, that's fine. The video, that's no problem.
I've put the video in chat.
No problem. So I'll go back to sharing here then. Is that, there we go. That's me back, I think. So the video, what you'll see is our children talking about their literacy. So it's little focus groups. They came and they described to the district inspector at the time what was happening in their literacy, how they participate in pupil focus groups in school, and the difference that has made to them. And I suppose the video will be there for you to watch, but it's more just the proof is in the pudding. And when you see some of the children communicate about the focus groups and what they say and how their views are listened to and the difference that makes, and when they talk about their free rights, which was as I said, entirely of their own construction. And that's basically then where children are given a topic or a stimulus, and they decide the genre in which to write. They decide to write it as a report, as a piece of poetry, as a diary entry. And that was what they asked to do. Give us a blank piece of paper and let us write in the way that we want. And that has become a huge curricular initiative within the school. So that is our parents. The other side to that is importantly the parent focus group. But before I move on, one thing that straddles both of them, one of the concerns is, pupil focus groups. Is it just a way that you watch teachers? Is it a way to get children to describe, a visible accountability on their teacher? And I'll be honest, we've done a lot to move thinking forward in the school and making it a process and allowing teachers to see why it's done, how it's benefiting our children in our curriculum. And it's about building that sense of, it's not about accountability, it's about responsibility to our children. And I won't say we're the finished product, it continues in that journey. And obviously there is, through all that we've been through, and a heightened vulnerability for teachers as to what has happened within their profession and their classrooms in the last number of years. So we have to be cautious and careful with that. But when it is done well and the teachers see the impact that both parent and pupil focus groups have in a positive way to the school environment, it definitely breaks down those apprehensions that may have existed. Within our parent focus group then, this started, we planned a year 4 intake evening, and we're a large school and it had 250 young 7 and 8 year olds up to the school with their parents, and it wasn't perhaps the optimal environment to see the school with such congestion. So we got a small group of parents together just to describe the experience and the hopes to us. And to be honest, at the end of that, I was absolutely blown away by the quality, the insight and the understanding that I had gleaned from that 2-hour discussion that I hadn't had previously. So it was felt, let's do this in the routine way that we would do with our pupils as well. So we do parent focus groups 3 to 4 times a year. It is an open invite to parents, and I put it in the newsletter when we are having them. Being an open invite, we have parents that are a constant and have been a constant with us for 4 years, and we have parents that join for 1 session and then we maybe don't see again. In the invite, I will put a primary focus that maybe the discussion will be centered around. So if that's something that they are interested in, that they can come and contribute. And that invite is given regularly to make sure all parents know at all times that they are welcome, that it's not a selected, named or nominated few that are invited onto that. We have to make sure at the start of the meetings and at the start of the year, we have that verbal agreement on the remit, the approach and the contributions. And I start every meeting by saying, this is not about naming your child or your child's individual experience or anything that has happened with your child's teacher. We are looking at the whole school. And your experience is important, but you have to put it in a way which is neutral and doesn't have any issues around sharing information that should be confidential or would be insensitive in this platform. And I'll be honest, we have had no problems there. We have had no problems there. And it is one thing when I've spoken before about this, staff and other schools have asked me, but what happens if a parent tables things that are inappropriate to be shared in that public forum? You quickly shut down, but it hasn't actually been a problem. I think our parents have so appreciated and enjoyed being part of the group that there is a caution not to do anything that would jeopardize it working to the optimal for both them, the school and their children. We have parent input into the agenda. So why I say, look, this one we really want to focus on our anti-bullying policy. What else would you like to table? So at every meeting, they have input into the agenda as well. And again, I start every meeting and say, before we finish, is there anything else that is of hot importance to you that you want to make sure we have time to discuss before we finish? Sharing actions, steps and actions taken. So exactly like the pupils, what is the impact? And for this parent focus group, it was important to me that the parents giving their time commitment, they saw it had immediate benefit and action. So at the end of every meeting, I list the things that I'm going to take forward, either for consideration or action. And then I start the subsequent meeting by saying, since we last met, this is what has happened. Now, that can be really, really small things. And some advice has been, one parent suggested our newsletter, the dates were too small at the bottom, and when it goes in the fridge, they can't see it, right to the very minutiae. But that was something that we could say, absolutely, next time you will see that changed. And they saw that immediate response and impact to their contribution. And I think that has been the staying power for a lot of our parents when they have joined for the 4 years. So establishing that routine and regularity. We have used it in school to consider quite significant or things that would be of contention or concern within the school, like when we split our classes when they're in P4 going into P5. So we've spent a lot of time with our parent focus group saying, right, how do we make this better for you and your child? And then I go back to the parents when I'm about to do that next year and say, the parent focus group have discussed, and this is their advocation. This year, we're doing it different in our transition for children moving up, and it all came on the back of the parent focus group. And again, presenting that out into the parental space and saying, here are our actions, and actually, we are doing this because your representatives in this group have suggested this as the way forward, has meant our school processes have been accepted, and there's been a buy-in very quickly to a lot of them. We've used it for policies, particularly the likes of our anti-bullying policy or positive behaviour, RSE. I've had parent focus groups just devoted to sitting and discussing our RSE curriculum and our school processes. We kept our focus group going on Zoom for the entirety of the last 2 years with the pandemic, and it was brilliant because all that we were trying to navigate as a school, trying to say to parents, what is it you need? What are the problems? We could really fine-tune a harmonious way of working between home and school with that really open, shared perspective from both ends, and parents understanding the challenges that were happening within the school as well. The impact then for that, so the focus group, these were some of the comments the focus group gave me recently. At the end of the term or the year, we say to them, okay, how did that work for you this year? For those members who've been on it, and what would you like to think moving forward or consider for next year? So some of the comments they made were they get a better understanding of why certain decisions are made or exist. And for me, that has been absolutely huge, making the rationale for decisions really explicit. And it is made, I have a very diverse school parental body in the community that I serve, very, very different socioeconomic backgrounds, professional backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, and having the opportunity for parents to appreciate the diversity of the community that we're serving, and therefore sometimes the rationale behind those decisions has been hugely assistive. The parents recognise a two-way understanding of issues, and it is both ways. They put their views to us, but at the same time, I am also representing why certain decisions are being made within school in a discussive way, and that is really, really helpful. One parent felt, we were new to a family in Strandtown and the pandemic didn't give us much opportunity to get involved in school life. This focus group provided an excellent opportunity to do just that. So parents who maybe aren't as prone to being available for fundraising or to going down the typical PTA route, it's another way, an opportunity to get parents involved. More comments there about the rationale behind decisions, representing views, particularly of working mums. So a lot of it has been on trying to support families as they navigate the complexities of family life with working parents and young children in school. And we do also then have in our parent focus groups parents who have children with special educational needs and have that ambassadorial role for those children within the school also. The quantification of some of those impacts, obviously that was sort of anecdotal. Improvements in school organisation. So as I mentioned, one of the surveys talked about communication, and we had a survey at one point, big school, prior to technology taking us forward, notes in the bag, how things were communicated, and we hadn't on a survey ranked terribly well on our communication with parents, and for different reasons. That became a real running agenda with our parent focus group: communication. Okay, how's it working? What's it working? What do you need to know? When do you need to know it? How do you need to know it? And we really unpicked every strand and element of that with the parents across many, many meetings. And I think we've really refined a lot of that. And the survey that we've just done recently, actually, this one I haven't dated, but was from just May there, 99% of our parents felt they are regularly informed of school information all of the time. And that feels hugely significant, but we couldn't have got there without the continual assistance and steerage and collaboration with our parent focus group. So that's just one example of how it's been really, really beneficial. Perfect vehicle for policy consultations and collaborations. So coming to school all the time, through our safeguarding performers, our changes in the likes of our RSE curriculum, our anti-bullying, our positive behaviour, and you have a ready-made group of people who are there and able to consult and discuss different aspects of your school curriculum when they are come, and that has been brilliant, and that has been used a lot. And this year, as the anti-bullying legislation came in September and we looked at our policy again, there were a lot of really good additions that our parents made relevant to our school context here on that policy. Increased insight into pupil and parent experience, understanding perception of our intentions and actions. For me, that is huge. There is so much that I do and we do on a daily basis in schools, and we perceive that it is being received in the way that we hope. Our intention is this, but how is it being received? And sitting with parents, really honest, candid conversations where I've said, we've done it in this way, and they've gone, well, that's not what it seemed, and it didn't work because our experience was. So that connection between our intentions and our actions and how they are actually received has been great. Key decisions given weight and impact by the parent focus group. That's what I was just saying in the previous slide, that going out to parents and being able to table, this is how we're going to be doing this year, because we've had input and discussion and guidance and advice from our parent focus group, has really kept momentum and buy-in and really assisted us within our school community. So there's some points specific to that parent focus group, but just to finish, the three elements that tie together here, and I see as the biggest drivers for trying to continue and sustain this in school: decision making, driving, and managing change. Both pupil and parent focus groups have been hugely assistive to us in that aspect, knowing where to take school organisation, knowing where to take curriculum, and the parent pupil focus groups can be assistive in an affirming way, in that they can let you know that yes, that is the right targets or priorities that the school SLT or the staff within the school have constructed, or they can also give you a fresh lens to consider matters that were maybe not as prevalent to us from within the building. Understanding impact, particularly our pupil focus groups there. We really get a good sense of the impact of our curriculum, the full expansive curriculum, from the core subjects to the preventative curriculum to the experiences that the child has from they step into school to they go home at the end of the day. What is the impact of that? And no better source than the children themselves. And relationships. Our children with their teachers, with their coordinators, it's a wonderful way to introduce children to different members of staff within the school, having those discussions. When children's viewpoints are being asked regularly, it elevates the respect. We have our mantra in school, like many schools, ready, respectful, safe, and it is an outworking of that respectful relationship, and certainly the relationships with the parents. And there have been many times in school where I've maybe been dealing with something that is tricky to navigate with a parent, and we've maybe had differing opinions on certain bits. And I've been able to say in those moments, come discuss this within our parent focus group. Rather than you and me right now, come discuss this in our parent focus group. Let's take this discussion wider and we'll see what that turns around. And that has had a hugely positive shift in some conversations and tones that we have had in the building. But I would like to believe those relationships will continue to grow from strength to strength as more parents join the group and we continue to foster those relationships across the school. Thank you so much. I hope some of that was of interest and use, and you'll get an opportunity to watch the video at some point in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victoria. There was so much in there for school leaders of both primary and post-primary schools, and addressing school improvement is fantastic stuff. And relationships are at the heart of everything we do, really, both with parents and pupils. I have put the evaluation link in the chat, as well as a link to that video, and also a link to the TPL Thursdays page. Next week's is a specifically primary orientated session, and it's the Northern Ireland curriculum developing using ICT in the primary school classroom, and that is with Ciara Mahan from SIA. So that session was postponed earlier as Ciara had COVID and was unable to fulfill the session. Once again, Victoria, thank you very much. That was brilliant. I'll have to look through that again and take some notes from my conversations with principals who are asking me how they can establish these kind of things, and I probably will be back to chat to you at some stage about it as well. Once again, thank you for everyone who's attended also. You're very welcome. Please fill in the evaluation form, and please put in any suggestions in that form for sessions that you would like to see in the next academic year. So thank you, Victoria, and cheerio everyone, and thank you.